Welcome to the Jackson Rudolph podcast. I'm Jackson Rudolph, and this episode is brought to you by Black Belt Magazine, the world's largest martial arts magazine. And today we have a very special guest, a friend of mine, one of my former teammates, current heavyweight superstar, and the leading man for Team Dojo Elite Power, one of the premier, especially fighting teams today, but they got some solid forms competitors as well. We have the awesome Kameren Dawson on today. Thank you very much for joining the show, Cam. And for our audience, just go ahead, introduce yourself. Who is Cam Dawson? Tell us a little bit of your martial arts journey.
Kameren Dawson from Baltimore, Maryland originally. I own a school out in Elk Ridge now. Travel the world competing, teaching on an everyday basis. Right now, we're just trying to get through this pandemic phase, man. Just trying to give these kids that structure. And everything is going extremely well, man. I appreciate you having me. We've been teammates. We know what it feels like to really, have that team bond, man. And, I hope just publicly that, I just want to thank you for being the teammate, that you were, man. It was an amazing ride. I appreciate you.
Absolutely. And same to you, brother. Appreciate you too. We had a great team together, and it was always all kinds of fun. And then, ultimately, I know that, your dad was a coach of Team Dojo Elite, and that kind of inspired, that move that you made.
Absolutely.
And, as a competitor, I respect that decision a ton. And so that is one thing that I want to go ahead and get into. As some of our viewers that are familiar with sport karate may know, your father was Gerald "Awesome" Dawson, legendary competitor. And I have to believe that he's probably the one that got you into the martial arts, right?
Yeah,
so,
man. It was along with my dad and Power Rangers, man. It was a major Power Rangers, man. Nobody can tell me I was not a Power Ranger as like a kid. So when I see kids coming to our school now and the parents sign them up, a lot of people think that, it's corny. But I think that as business owners, I think we should kind of ride their wave more, allow them to feel like they can be, a reflection of their self. But my dad never killed that dream of me until, I realized that they weren't real. But, it was something that made me want to start. So, that keeps my excitement when I see a kid come through the door and, he's showing me all his Power Ranger stances. It just gives me that reference point of why, I really started. So I definitely know that that, and along with my dad being an inspiration within the community, that was something that was major. It was a rough area at that point in time when my dad had the school in the city. Later on, we was able to get out of this city, but within that time, it was definitely a really, really rough time. And, at times he couldn't pay bills and all those other things. But the biggest thing that spoke to me is that he never quit. People always told him, get a job, or how they always tell us, get a real job, or karate's not a real job, whatever. But he stuck it out, man. It became, profitable. He was able to provide for his family off of that. So, yes, he started me off in martial arts, but I would have to say he started me off in manhood first. That was the first part.
Mm-hmm. So you would say that your dad's role as a martial arts instructor and as a leader in your community, that was something that inspired you in the martial arts before you really ever even knew about his success as a competitor. Is that right?
Yeah, absolutely, man. My dad was never my dad had a big presence physically, but his voice and stuff like that, he was never really loud or anything. And he always put his students first. So if we did demonstrations, anything like that, he would never do anything. It wasn't until I got older and could start traveling with him. So he might have went and go competed in Waco and won and came home and act like nothing happened. He would teach the next day. And I didn't know until I got older as to who he was. And, we would go overseas and I was like, Dad, how do they know you? Dad, how do they know this? And he'd be like, I just kind of dabbled in it, and it took me to find tapes and VHS and, recordings of him fighting. I was like, you kind of the man. And then, that's where he allowed me to kind of, grow. And that's where he started building me up. But martial arts wasn't even a focus at first, man. He was just saving lives at one point. That was the major thing for us. Tuition was based on trust. We had a little bucket, and you could drop the cash or the checks, but we always knew that, you got 100 students and you made $200 on tuition. Like everybody's obviously not paying, bro. It's like something's definitely not adding up. But he did it and he maintained that integrity, year after year after year. So he definitely got me started. He definitely kept me focused and gave me that structure. You know what I mean? That was major.
Absolutely. And a great testament to his integrity, his humility that made him the great man that he was. And of course, still my condolences for what happened and the strength that you've shown throughout this process. Now you're taking over the school yourself.
Yes, sir.
And additionally, I mean, one of my favorite moments in sport karate that I've ever witnessed, and I've been in this sport for almost 15 years, was shortly after he passed at the Warrior Cup in his old uniform and the empty coach's chair. I mean, it was truly one of the greatest martial arts moments that I've ever witnessed. And so just to take a trip down memory lane, is there one time that you remember watching him fight, or even when you were a kid or when you were older and he was fighting?
Yeah.
You have a moment like that to share?
Yeah, man, it was that moment remind me of the moment that you're trying to get me to talk about when my dad's mother passed away. Bro, heavy. Bro, my dad was like shut down school. He was like, I'm not doing this no more. Like he even shut down the school and went to go like teach somewhere else at like some like ABC karate or whatever. Like he was just not being himself. And he put on a lot of weight, man. He was going through it hard. And then he just hit a switch and just dropped all his weight, opened the school back up in a rec center. And that, I believe it was Amerikick. This is when Amerikick was still NBL. Man, that year he was just on a tear. 98, I believe it was. 98, he came out on fire. Like, and it was like, he used to always say, like, I don't know what I'm doing until I'm done. And, when I think about me at AKA Grands, bro, I have no recollection at all. I remember, like, putting my uniform on, but other than that, it was rough, man. It was, like, I don't remember kicking, punching over. I just remember it just being over. And, at that point, I was really done. I mean, I didn't have nothing else to prove. I didn't have nothing else to really do. In my opinion, I was done. And then, I realized that when you're in a leadership position, the easiest thing to do is quit, So I don't have to win another battle. I don't have to win another overall. I don't have to hit anybody else. I'm strictly doing it to lead by example. That's it, and that's all.
That's awesome. And that's extremely admirable, and that's something that resonates with me a lot as a competitor, because I kind of went through a similar crossroads where it was like, I've won everything, when I was, a 8-year-old kid at the US Open, it was, I could retire if I ever win one of those, you know what I mean? And then, you win these events multiple times over, and, you look at it, and one thing that I realized, and one thing that's kept me in it for as long as I've been in it, is at some point, it's not about that anymore. It's not about winning the U.S. Open or the battle or the diamonds or it doesn't matter. It's about what you're trying to teach others by going out there, inspiring others and uplifting kids and showing them that anything is possible. And that's what that's all about.
The message, and it's a message that me and you can send without even saying anything. I mean, we get on stage and we walk in a room and cultivate a room and stop a room just based on the way we conduct ourselves. So, as far as dudes like me and you are concerned, it's not truly many of us, but you don't have to say we're too sport karate or we're too commercial, because the values and principles are going to be parallel no matter where we go. The way I act in the schools, the way I'm acting at the tournament, I'm not going to have a interchangeable personality. So I think that maintaining that standard and keeping in mind, that somebody paved the way for us, but the biggest thing is that I think me and you don't have any hesitation with giving credit. I think that's major, man. I see you say things about, like Mike Bernardo and K.A. like all the time, and you really pay that homage, man. And that's where I'm at with it. I think if we lose sight and think that we are the end all to be all to this thing, then, I definitely think that's when it's time to hang it up when you forget your purpose or why you're there. Because I'm there to show you how to win and how to take a loss. I'm not just here to show you how to win, but we do have competitors who don't maintain that integrity at all times, and that's where we see who the real champions are on and off the mat. So for any school owners that are listening, those life skills that we teach in the school are super important. It doesn't have to do with just, in the karate school. Those life skills transfer into the tournament aspects also.
Mm-hmm. And that's one thing that I wanted to talk to you about. You talk about being in the school and motivating kids and, bringing up the youth and the next generation to take our place. You know what I mean? Part of part of what I'm all about is trying to always get people to remember the history, right? It's not like the history of bow step isn't just what you see, right now with me doing bow. You know what I mean? It goes so much deeper than that. And there have been, all of these great innovators that their careers coincided, right? And so, but getting off of the tournament topic and talking about what you were going into, which is specifically in the schools, you're running your own school now. And so, a kid comes into your dojang, because you're a Korean stylist, right?
Sure.
You know him, right?
I'm Yep.
Excuse me. Gotcha. But anyway, so kid comes into your school. What is, in your opinion, the most important thing that you teach your students? What is it? What is that life skill? What is that lesson that you want everybody that comes in your school to go home?
I would say to pick one, it would probably be appreciation, because I think appreciation drifts them into how can I say it? Because if they appreciate their parents, then they're less likely to disrespect them. If they appreciate their teachers, they're less likely to drift off. Because when you have that appreciation, it brings something out of you, right? Like when you appreciate someone's time, you're not likely to do things that don't show that appreciation. So, we always stress appreciation for mom and dad. So even when we have belt testings and we give the kids a hand or whatever, we take a second when we have the kids sit. We have the parents stand and we give the parents a hand also, because it's just that appreciation for being able to have that time in and that dedication. So the more we get the kids to understand, hey, it's not really cool to goof off in school, because if you appreciate your teachers and the time that they put into what they're going to be teaching you, you don't really know that they're getting up before school starts or they're getting there early. So the more we build that appreciation for the small things, I think that's one of the values that really goes a long way. And that helps us, maintain the traditional culture that we have within our school, is that they understand hierarchy, but not out of fear, but because of appreciation. And I think that is a major thing, because I remember growing up taking class, the hierarchy was respected because it was that or else. It wasn't because, I truly understand the value that I'm getting. And the more that we stress appreciation in our school, and that's when we see the more compassionate and genuine side of our students start to come out. And I know for a lot of school owners, that's very uncomfortable, right? Because we're in a day and age where, as instructors, there's a fine line that we can't cross with being too friendly. I remember growing up in class, we would give high fives, hugs, all those things was cool. But now we're in a day and age where those things are not okay. So how do we express the love and appreciation for a student, and how does the student now show the love and appreciation for an instructor? So, I think that appreciation just has to be verbalized more, and so that, we can convey, the value that the child and the parent are receiving.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. That's an excellent message, and a message that I certainly don't think is heard enough. So I appreciate you sharing that with everybody. And, I know that a lot of because if you're watching the Jackson Rudolph podcast, you guys know that I'm a sport karate guy. So I know that a lot of our listeners want to get into some sport karate stuff. We were talking a bit before the show about some topics you wanted to discuss. And one thing that you pointed out was you wanted to discuss the state of point fighting, right? So go ahead and tell us, what are your thoughts? And then maybe we can have a little discussion about that.
I think that there may need to be some new terms used in order to help the integrity of what we do. There's too many times where we hear about top-notch point karate competitors. They might be juniors, and that's all I'm truly concerned about. I'm not truly concerned about nobody that's grown. I mean, that's just not my. If you're a grown man and can't fight, that's definitely on you. But as far as the juniors, how many times do we hear about them being bullied, or we might see a post where one of them got, like beat up? Who is truly accountable for that? Because we're training them in a repetitious manner, right? And that's what everybody say. Repetition is the mother skill, all right? And everybody, even when it comes down to sport karate, and they say, well, the game is trash, and all it is tag or whatever. Of course, we see some good shots here and there, but never do we want the game to become a malicious thing. And this is such a hard topic because so many people get bashed for saying, well, it's not what it was. And that goes for everything, right? You ask, let's say you might ask Jerry Rice about football now. He's going to say, oh, it's watered down. They throw a flag for everything. You ask Isaiah Thomas about basketball now. Well, defense is not what it was. This person couldn't do that in my era, right? And we don't want to compare eras, but there is something to be said about substance, right? And as far as sport karate is concerned now, as instructors, we have to just care about substance, right? I want my students to be able to use the same sidekick that they would use in school against, a bully per se, that they would use in a tournament. I don't want them to feel as though now we're confusing them. And now, let's say one of my students, if I haven't prepared them properly and they're getting pushed around and shoved and they have to defend themselves, and the first thing that they do is this. Or they throw their hand up. I want them to throw the same reverse punch that they're going to throw, sparring. I want to build a habit over and over again. And Coach Damon Gilbert is one of the ones that, stressed that to me growing up, is that training is building habit, right? So I'm not saying that the sport needs to be hurting. I'm definitely not saying I want to see anyone hurt, but there has to be some substance so that these kids can feel confidence to defend themselves. I mean, like if you go back and watch a KA or Mafia Holloway, it don't matter if they were throwing techniques in a ring or if they had to defend themselves, that same right hand, that same left hook, that same ridge hand, that same angle punch, that contact is what made it a combat sport. And now when we get more into saying it's speed fighting or it's a game of tag, I think that takes away from the kids' ability to transfer that into knowing how to defend themselves. Because think about it, within those, what we would call pioneers, their students, I don't remember none of their students coming into school saying that they was getting bullied or picked on. I don't remember that. I don't remember that kind of happening until this became tag. Right. And it's the character development that we learn in the school that helps us deal with outside life. So we can't tell our students that if such and such happens on the bus stop or happens on the playground, we'll get back up. Well, how if they're not used to being hit? Once again, I'm not saying anybody has to be hurt, but there has to be a certain amount of integrity that goes behind the technique that is being thrown. And then the people who are on a pedestal now, they are at fault also for teaching faulty technique. And what is the student supposed to do if their instructor does not teach tournaments or teach sport karate? They go to YouTube, they go to Facebook, and now they're misled and misguided by the presence of what they see, but the technique is not fact-checked. Or when you go to check on or use it, you have kids, you have what they will call now, big time stars in our sport doing drill videos and their wrist is limp. So now when a little kid follows that and he hurts his wrist, you are at blame for the well-being of that child. Because now we are not teaching the technique anymore. And I feel like if we could get back to making things more solid and allowing the kids to feel confident within defending themselves, I think that we might see a difference as far as the sport is concerned. But as of right now, could most juniors use their sport karate to defend themselves? No, I don't believe that.
Right. I understand that. And for our viewers that maybe have not seen Cam fight before, go on YouTube and educate yourself, because Cam's too humble to ever say this, but I'll say it for him. He walks the walk when he's talking about this stuff, right? I mean, I've seen him smack guys in the face with a step-in back fist or the ridge hand to the body that could break ribs. I have held a sidekick shield for Cam at martial arts before, and I have felt through the shield Cam's heel in my side, you know what I mean? And so he walks the walk when it comes to true martial arts technique. And so forgive me, but I'm going to stir the pot just a little bit here. I'm just curious. What's your least favorite single technique in all of point
fighting? Come on, man. And that's my disposition. Because I can't even say that's point karate, bro. That the lead hand to the body, man. It's a cop out. It's a cop out, man.
Which, by the way, still doesn't score under NASCAR rules, but under WACO, that's a very.
Well, it depends who ring you in. Because some of them say if you retract it, then it's no longer back fist, that it's a jab now. And because you retract it and demonstrated the technique, I've dropped dudes in NASCAR from a body jab and gotten a point for it. So it all depends on which ring you're supposed to be in and what technique is demonstrated on it. And to kind of backtrack on the technique translating, when you look at a JKA, like a Japanese Karate Association, the standard that they hold is across the board. They're not letting them, okay, you can throw a punch and I'll pull it back, but because you're 3, it's fine. Or because you're 4, it's fine. The standard is the same. So once we start breaking standard and we let some of it go, that means we got to let all of it go. You know what I mean? And I think if we maintain that standard, because it's crazy, man. And what we do, sport karate, you are supposed to be rewarded a point for a technique that demonstrates that not only have you struck the opponent, but you stopped their progression, right? So if we're on stage fighting, I would never be so arrogant enough to say if the score, we've seen scores 15 to 14, 16, I am not good enough to hit you 16 perfectly times in 2 minutes. That means that the standard is just so low for the criteria of scoring. And I know it sounds like, well, he's stuck in that time because that's how he was trained. And yes, that's what my mindset is. And I don't fault anybody for the new way of doing it. But as far as the next generation coming up, I feel as though for them to have that confidence in order to defend themselves, because that's my main thing. And a lot of people don't even know that sport karate is sport is like second self-defense training, and rollouts and break falls and locking and all that stuff comes first in our system first. The sport is like a privilege kind of thing. So if I could get the juniors and the younger generation to feel more comfortable defending their stuff, I think that would be amazing. And if we do have any school owners on here, and if I had to give a tip about preparing your students for sparring, I would say teach the defense first, right? How many of us start students off, okay, go forward and hit, but they're not too comfortable. But if you teach them what an evasion is, if you teach them what a counter is, if you teach them how to defend themselves, then the confidence of fighting is there because they don't feel as though someone's going to take advantage.
So that brings up an interesting question, because I know that you've watched the tape and I've watched the tape, and I was just talking to Steve Babcock, one of the coaches of Team Paul Mitchell, on the episode last week. And he was telling stories about, and when Cam and I say KA for our viewers, that means Kevin Thompson. KA was his most common nickname, even though he had a whole bunch of them because of how great he was. Greatest competitive martial artist of all time. But, Steve was saying that KA, when he would fight, you rarely saw the score go above 3 points. Like, Steve never saw anybody score more than 3 points on Kevin. So do you think that's a matter of there being a higher standard back in the day? Or do you think it's more of a stylistic thing where maybe KA was just more of a defensive fighter, like you're talking about the importance of defense? Or do you think it's a little bit of both of those things working together?
I definitely think it's a little bit of both, but you're talking about a time where in that system of fighting back then, blocking was a such thing. In our sport, they have eliminated blocking totally. There is no such thing. Hits the glove, 2 points. If they throw the axe kick and the hamstring gets caught on your neck because the foot is close enough, 2 points. So it's definitely a thing of standard and the times of how things kind of happen. And I do get it that some refs are going based on, well, they demonstrated control. Absolutely. If that's something that judge feels, but a lot of times that's not something that is voiced.
Right. And so we talk about, scoring, and we're talking about judging now. So I want to get into a really common topic, as there's a lot of rule changes that are being considered right now by multiple leagues. WACO just announced a list of rule changes, both for combat sports and for forms and weapons competition. ProMac, which is the large regional sport karate circuit in the United States, I believe that they recently started doing 1-point body kicks. NASCA still has it as 2 points for a body kick. A lot of fighters have opinions about this. What do you think it should be and why?
One point if they're standing. If you drop them, definitely 2.
Oh, interesting. So you think it should be based on if the other competitor goes to the ground? For
sure. If it's even like the way atomics used to be, like the atomic rules, there was a 2-point reverse punch at one point, just based on the response that you got from the shot and how solid that shot was. Once again, standard. Are we saying that a side kick, knee being bent, is the controlled aspect, or is it the lack of distance? So, I definitely think it's up to how that person's feel. That person who threw the kick might have felt like, well, I would have hurt you if I would have ended it. Other person may feel as though, well, in order to demonstrate a perfect technique, then you should have stopped my forward progression. I think 1 point for, striking and retracting it, of course, but dropping them, definitely 2. Definitely 2, for sure.
That's interesting. I think that one thing that maybe scares leagues when it comes to rules like that is it's like, well, at that point, are you rewarding excessive contact, which a lot of leagues have rules against that, right? And the other thing is, you talk about quality of judging, which, by the way, I think judges get a bad rap. I think in general, we have more good judges than people think that we have.
Right.
Just all that you ever on social media is the bad calls. You don't hear about the good calls. You know what I mean? You don't hear about your Terry Kramers and these great centers that run great rings and really help point fighting be a quality sport. And a lot of times it's people from back in the day that are trying to carry it over. You know what I mean? Sure. But I think the other thing is the arbitration of it, right? Like, well, what if it appears as if the competitor slipped, and even though the D side landed, it wasn't the D side that made the other competitor fall. So you get stuff like that. But in practice, in principle, I like what you're saying there. The effectiveness of the technique makes the technique more valuable. So I like that idea.
Keep in mind, as far as excessive contact is concerned, there's no such thing as excessive contact to the body.
Oh, true. Right.
So they can say excessive contact to, the head area. Mm-hmm. As far as you see people throwing like the big ridge hands, or you might see a dude get hit with a real stiff jab. But as far as body shots, as far as I know, you can't be disqualified overseas or here for a body shot.
Well, that's good to know. See, learn something new every day. I did not know that previously. I thought excessive contact
was because a
thing. So
now, of course, if they're saying that the body shot is like late or something like that, but I've never seen WACO, they do the whole warning. I've never even seen that for a body shot. I mean, I've been overseas and hit dudes with jump back kicks, ridge hands, reverse punches. Damon Gilbert has been overseas and dropped dudes. Raymond has been overseas and dropped dudes. I've never seen excessive to the body. So, it might be one thing that they can kind of consider. And with the juniors, it will kind of be non and void because they have their protective body shield.
Right. And that actually brings up another interesting topic, because there was recently, if you go to blackbeltmag.com for our viewers, there's recently an article that I put up about some of the rule changes that WACO said they're implementing January of 2021. WACO is the World Association of Kickboxing Organizations. They're the governing body that sanctions the Irish Open, the world's largest point fighting martial arts tournament. They also offer kickboxing and forms of weapons competition, but the Irish Open weight is known as like the premier title in all of point fighting. But anyway, one of the rules that I noticed they implemented is there's a difference now between and forgive me if I get the terminology wrong here, but I believe it's called a technical disqualification versus this isn't the word they use, but it's effectively a sportsmanship or personal, something along those lines, disqualification. Where if it's a technical disqualification, maybe conduct, maybe that was the word that they used. I would have to go back and look at the actual document, see exactly what word they used. And there's not any details from what I saw yet, but it seems like the technical disqualification is when, blood is drawn or something, things like I once saw Trevor Nash, get bloodied in a team fight, and then All Stars lost like 10 points because that's how the rules were, when it was really just an inadvertent cut, and that shouldn't have.
That's when he kicked Tomas. When he kicked Tomas, he threw the triple round kick and he caught the last kick. Yeah.
Right, exactly. And so that can cause a 10-point swing that probably shouldn't be a 10-point swing. But it seems like now what they're doing is for things like that, where it's like a technicality in the rules, you get disqualified from the fight and then nothing happens. And then if you have, and again, maybe conduct, maybe along those lines, one of those disqualifications, cheating, things like that, of course, you actually lose your placement, your prize money, your medal, stuff like that. So if you were in like a semifinal fight, right, or let's say you were in gold and silver, right, you get disqualified under one of those violations for the gold and silver fight. You don't get the second place prize money, nor do you get your silver medal. You're just out. You don't get any of it, which I think is pretty cool. I think that's a good way to do it, because then you're showing that there's a difference between getting disqualified because of bad luck, kind of like happened to Lily Rouliard in the women's finals, right? When Lily, I think she had a broken nose, she had to bow out. She shouldn't lose her second place money. You know what I mean? I mean, that's, she got a broken nose and had to bow out. But if it was something, egregious, cheating, misconduct, things like that, hitting way late, that type of thing, then you get your title, you get your money, all that stripped from you, even if you were in the final fight. Anyway, just a little aside there, because I wrote an article about that recently. I wanted to bring that up. Next thing, we're going to go ahead and move on here. One thing that you mentioned, and kind of when we were talking before, is how can we improve, which I think you posed just kind of a general question. So I know you probably have some points that you want to talk about. Are you referring to sport karate as a whole, point fighting?
Yeah, I definitely think the martial arts industry, as a whole, and it's going to be hard, man, because accountability, you have a lot of instructors who teach that accountability and maintaining standard and what their schools stand for. But the most important thing is that we don't mislead these children, and I can't stress that enough, that we do not want to mislead the children. And it's crazy how me and you are on the same page about so much stuff, because even when you're doing your both staff seminars, I've never seen you say, we just going to bypass this because we got to get here. I've always seen you break it down. This is a shear, that is a strike, that is a strike. I've never seen you eliminate the self-defense or realistic aspect. And I think when we start having schools that, we don't spar, and even if you're not comfortable sparring, we have so many games in the industry in order to make the kids, a little bit more tough, because my biggest thing is it hurts me to see a child become a victim to something that we are ultimately responsible for. And of course, you're going to have a lot of rebuttals that say, well, we teach them all day long, but we're not in the street with them. But we are to train their autopilot. And what I mean by that is we have to get the repetition in so much that if they ever need it, that it could truly be, applied. And I know there's no committee to tell anybody how to run their school, but if we could just be more humble as instructors, man, and just kind of really evaluate what we're doing. What is the fluff of the curriculum, and what is the practical part of the curriculum, and not be, not be, I don't want to say too manly or too, I don't
think that you're above it. You know what I mean?
Right. I don't want anybody to feel like, because we all have parts of our systems or style that within that time that it was created, that it was good. So like, for example, me teaching the ITF forms, ITF Taekwondo forms, I tell my students that when you do things like, a W-shaped block or mountain block, I told them, if you try that in the street, I'm going to kick you. There is no practical application for it. but you have to tell them that, oh, okay, this is the tradition of what I am doing within that time of people who might have known martial arts. Maybe they were defending against, a front kick and attacker from behind. But in this day and age, we're just not there. But you have to give them the education, and the knowledge. And I think as far as the industry, increases and starts understanding that tournaments are healthy for the children. And we all know why people don't do tournaments at times. We know that it's the price. We know that, and a lot of it is fear of, exposure. But the reason why tournaments in the past were so big is because they had confidence in what they taught. So it was nothing to bring their students out because they knew their students were sharp. They knew their students could defend themselves, and it was a joyous moment to see their growth. But the reason why people don't feel as though it's joyous now, because if you get exposed, you might have came to the tournament with 20, but you're gonna leave with 3. But it's just a thing of maintaining standard. So as far as the standard of where we are, I think that we just need a little bit more quality control. And I don't think it has to do with style, because I think anything man-made is going to have flaws, right? So everything's going to have little holes here and there, but what can we give the children in order to make sure that they don't have to be a victim of any sort? I mean, we in the world, man, where being a victim is so, it's major, and as karate school owners, I don't think we understand what we create. And what I mean by that is we have a shirt in our school that says, we are a university. And under it says, we are a union of diversity. And the karate school is the only place in the world right now. I mean, let's be honest, when you get on a football team, we know who's running the fastest. You get on the basketball team, you know who's jumping, you know who's shooting. I mean, all these things, hockey, figures, everything has its preference. But the martial arts man, you get on the floor and everybody's held to the same standard. If you don't know this, you fail. If you don't uphold this, you don't get your next rank. If you don't do this, then that doesn't. We literally create something within the world that's not really a part of everyday life that people don't get to experience. I don't think that people pay that attention. I don't think that people pay attention to it because we create a very rare environment. We can have, Caucasian kids, African American kids, Latino kids, Asian, and they're all in one group. Really integrated. When I sat back and looked at my summer camp today, I was like, oh, this is amazing. Everything on the other side of this door does not mean anything, and we create that. So because we create that, now what do we do with it? Do we give them a falsehood when they go back out into the world? And of course, we hope that they don't ever have to use it, but in the event that they do, yeah, man, let's definitely make sure that they're okay, because being a victim is not okay for anyone.
Absolutely. That's an excellent message about the inclusivity of martial arts. You know what I mean? A couple of episodes ago, I spoke with Master Isaac Hostley, who's a prominent instructor out in Colorado Springs, prominent Black school owner, although I don't think that you should have to give a title to what type of prominent school owner they are. But he was speaking, he has experience in the military, experience in the police force. He was speaking a lot about what we can do in the martial arts industry and in the martial arts community to be better and be more inclusive. And really, like you're saying, appreciate the diversity that we have in the martial arts, because it is something that invites and welcomes everybody, and everybody's put on an equal playing field. So for anybody that's interested in that conversation, you can go back, scroll up in the Facebook feed a little bit here on Black Belt Magazine. You can check out that episode as well with Master Isaac Hostley. And so now, Cam, that was kind of you had a segue there where you started talking about tournaments for a little bit. I want to kind of dive back into the tournament discussion a bit, because another thing that you brought up to me, we were talking before the show, is you want to talk about originality of competitors, and I assume that you mean maybe lack thereof, right? Yeah. So go ahead, and what are your thoughts on that topic, originality?
I just remember there being a time where you knew who was Kung Fu, you knew who was Taekwondo, you knew who was Shotokan by what they demonstrated, but I definitely think because of the lack of guidance, the only thing that they can go to now is the internet. So if there's one video or few people giving this information out, then you can't fault people for doing what they are taught. And that's why it's such a double-edged sword, because we have Kimbo dudes who don't even maximize the strengths that they already have. And then we got Taekwondo dudes who have beautiful strengths, but don't feel secure enough to demonstrate that because someone says that it's not right. So let's take Coach Steve for example. Coach Steve never put himself in a box and said, well, I can only do this and I can only do that. But you can see his base in what he does. You know, everything that Mafia Holly did, you could see the Taekwondo was there. You could see Pedro, you could see his Taekwondo was there. You could see KA's karate from when he was bouncing to, you know, when he turned his guard in. You know, it was that originality that people had. And I think people are a little afraid to demonstrate that because they might be shunned for being different. And in any situation, I don't think that being different is an issue. You can use me for example. I've never conformed or converted to doing, you know, what everyone is doing now per se with the technique selection. And I feel as though the technique selection, because of different influences, has been minimized so much, right? And I don't know for everyone, but when I was testing for black belt, anything under black belt was a basic. So that means on red belt, if I know a tornado round kick, that's a basic. If I know a 360 hook kick on red belt black stripe, that's a basic. If back like axe kick is on green belt, that's a basic. Spin hook kick is on gold belt, that's a basic. And then you see dudes only go out there and fight and use, you know, 1, 2, or 3 things. And then a kid who might have been taught those techniques may feel insecure in order to express themselves, but they're forgetting the most important thing is that this is an art. And I feel like, you know, if everybody's painting the same picture, then we don't have any different kind of artists. You know, everybody's just trying to, you know, give the same thing over and over and over again. And that's something that, you know, that we would have to really give you credit for, is being able to repaint the picture over and over and over again, man. And even if it's just a section, but it's a section of you. But even if you got it from somewhere, it's unique to you. You know what I mean? So I think if we could get back to people being okay with being their strengths, I mean, I think that would be an amazing thing. I think that, you know, they say styles make fights, but who want to watch Floyd fight Floyd? That's gonna be a fun fight.
Right. No, and thank you for the compliment. I really appreciate that. And it's interesting hearing that coming from a fighter talking about fighting, because in forms and weapons, we talk about it all the time. I call them cookie cutter forms, right? Because everybody does extreme forms. They've got to have a jump front kick, and they've got to have a flash kick that goes to the corner, and they've got to have an aerial, and they've got to, like, there's these, and they've got to, their combos have to use chop punches instead of, you know, middle block punches or high block punches, right? People don't mix it up enough. And like you're saying, I love what you said there. You said it in a fighting context, but still, it's like all the techniques below black belt are technically basic techniques because there's so much more to learn beyond that. Right. And so you look at sometimes even black belt competitors in the forms and weapons divisions only using 5 or 6 of their basic techniques and their hand combinations when they have 25 to 30 at their disposal, and they wouldn't even have to use black belt content that they've gotten since they tested for their black belt to be doing that. Yeah. So I think that's a really cool message, and that's a really cool way to put it. I've never thought about it like that before, and I appreciate that was put into a fighting context as well, because I feel like a lot of people don't see it that way. So I appreciate that perspective. Next thing that we're getting into, you guys haven't noticed, I got my notes down here. Excitement. Go ahead, Cam.
No, I was just saying that we definitely just want to have that, you know, excitement. That's it.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. So another one, you guys, Cam is one of the most prepared podcast guests that I've had. He literally sent me like a list of the topics that he wanted to talk about before I ever even crafted anything. So the next one that Cam sent me, he said, let's talk about what is the definition of a champion. I feel like you've alluded to it a couple of times, right? But maybe just put it into a sentence, summarize that for us.
And maybe we could say definition of, for the sports side, what a champion is, and the definition of what a true instructor is, man. I feel like we've lost that with, you know, rank comes responsibility. I think we've lost that, man. Like, how many times do we hear about, you know, the local karate school, you know, owners at the bar drunk, or he's doing this, man. And you know, we see it in our sport crazy, bro. We see it horribly man, these dudes get off stage, be falling down drunk, smoking in front of kids. Man, it's crazy. And I literally just think that depending on how you were raised in martial arts, because this is not for everyone, but the standard of what a champion is, look at how Muhammad Ali was him at all times, man. I mean, even towards his later years or whatever, the presence and how he carried himself remained the same. And that's something I think that as, everyday instructors, and I think as champions as far as sport karate for what we do, I think that there needs to be a little bit more focus on, once again, maintaining the standard. And if we maintain that standard across the board, I think that it would be a major help. I find it crazy that for sport karate tournaments, that the competitors are congregating, or some are congregating at the bar that kids are now walking past to ask them for autographs. That don't sit well with me, man. I would never be in a position that even if I know people do what they do in their spare time, but I feel like when you are a champion or you are an instructor, you now assume the responsibility of such, and it is very easy to take that image. And I'm not saying that people can't live their life or do whatever they must, do in order to be happy, but I do think that there should be a standard as to what a champion is, not just in the physical ability, but the mental preparation that we go through and understanding of, how much of this responsibility rides on us. You know what I mean? I've came up and been younger, and I've seen some dudes that I've seen on stage when I was younger, maybe like 10, 11, and they be like in the hallway, like falling apart drunk or whatever. And this is some dudes and people who they see in the limelight, and they're this person, they giving high fives and kissing babies and all this other crazy, and everybody love them. But behind closed doors, that presenting self and actual self is not the same person. So, that's just, and it might be a personal disconnect that I have. That's just not how I was raised, and as far as the martial arts is concerned. And once again, we could go to Coach Damon Gilbert, and guys, if you see, he'll be teaching at the Super Show, the Super Show soon, right?
Just passed. He already taught. But I think some of that stuff is up on Black Belt Magazine on this page. So if you scroll through, you might be able to find some of Coach Gilbert's content. But go ahead, Cam.
Yeah, man. When you look at a Coach Gilbert, he's someone that's through and through all the time as a martial artist, as a law enforcement, as a father, for me as a family member. I've never seen the people I look up to break stride of being what a champion is, and I would hesitate to call someone a champion who cannot conduct themselves as such outside of the ring. And even all the fun that me and you've had at tournaments or whatever, man, I've never had to tell you like, yo, Jack, I don't think we should be doing that. Jack, I mean, even when it comes to standard with us being men and how we treat the females on our team and the women around us, man, I've never been with you, bro, and been like, I don't think we should be doing this. So I don't think everything that we have done has been ethically correct by the book every single time. And I just think that, champions have to identify champions, and those that are not such, need to relinquish that title because you're not willing to uphold the responsibility of that, which it might be personal. That's just how I feel about it, but it definitely doesn't mean that, I'm right.
No, I mean, I think you're right. I think that's an excellent take, and I think that a lot of people watching would agree with that, and I think really, really well said. I mean, I think that was kind of the perfect definition of exactly what I think a champion should be as well. And that gives us an idea of the type of competitors that you respect. And now I want to get to a question that I feel like a lot of people may have been waiting for, and that is, and this may be two different people, so if it's two different people, go ahead and say them both. But out of all the fighters that you've ever faced, because you've faced some great ones, who would you say is either the toughest or the most skilled? And again, if that's two different people, give us two different people, fighter that you've ever fought. And I can only assume this is going to be somebody you consider to be a champion, as you just defined.
Toughest. Tough is like gave me a hard time, or tough is like took the best shot?
I'd say gave you a hard time. So toughest as in hardest for you to beat, and then maybe if it was somebody different, somebody you thought was really the most skilled fighter you've ever fought.
Yeah, my dad, man. That dude gave me a lot of issues, man. It got to a point where I was physically better than my father, and that was something that he had told me, but it was always something to be learned. As a competitor, since I was fighting in men's at 14, I've never been hurt. I've never been knocked out, any of those things. All of my hardest fights were always in the school. My jaw being hurt, teeth being cracked, concussion, all that came from the school. Never happened in sport karate competition ever. And once again, I hope that does not happen. But my father, man, as far as teaching me how the game goes and can sometimes put me in a position to think more and be more understanding. And we might spar 15, 16 rounds and not hit each other. And he might do something small, like I think to work out over, and he hit me and take all the stuff off. Well, what does that really mean? The mental warfare, he won. So it wasn't always physical all the time, but it was thinking and thinking. And every time I thought I knew it all, he showed me one more thing. And then I think I got everything. And I think, man, he 50. Nah, he ain't going to hit. He hit that switch a little bit more, man, and always had something to, show me. But toughest, like, gave me issues. Like, bro, I missed half of sixth grade from being knocked out from my father.
That's really cool. And again, a testimony to his greatness and the fight IQ that he had. Out of curiosity,
that's the word, fight IQ. That's the word.
If I had to make you pick somebody that you actually competed against in a tournament, I had to make you pick one person, who would you say? I know it's a tough one.
Tough opponent that I competed against. And this is no disrespect to anybody. That's a hard question because of where my standards for hard are, and what people present is not the same thing. I've had good fights, but hard, no. That's just my opinion. People who make me think. Avery Plowden makes me think. When Ross was fighting, Ross would make me think. Jason Tanks and Borelli would make me think. But hard, like somebody I felt like on me, like I just can't get away. Like I really gotta protect myself. Nah, I haven't came across that animal yet. But that means that dude is gonna have to possess something that he's willing to stand there too. Because keep in mind, everything that somebody's willing to give me, a lot of people are not willing to take. But we've definitely seen how that turned out for a lot.
I really like the way that you answer that, because I hadn't even thought, like, if people ask me who's the hardest person I've ever had to face, I would go with a list of people who had beaten me a couple times. You know what I mean? But when you think about it that way and you define it as somebody that you really struggled with, I kind of see what you're saying. Like, it's hard to say, especially as a competitor, as somebody that strives for greatness. What's happening?
I know. I'm saying you've been with me, this whole ride. You've seen me have good fights, bro. You never see me struggle.
Right. No, I agree. I can attest to that. Never seen you.
I've had good fights, but nobody has stood there and met me in the middle of the ring, ever. But I think that's a generational gap from the way I was taught how to fight and the way people fight now. I just think it's generational. I don't think it makes me tougher than anybody else. It's just different styles. Some people might be fighting more like Canelo now, and I was taught how to fight like Mike Tyson. It's different. It's different. Right. It don't mean that nobody, excuse me, it doesn't mean that people can't, but they have to be willing to accept everything that comes with doing that also. And a lot of dudes just not really willing to, take that step. But, definitely looking into doing some other fighting, other than, point karate. So, you'll definitely see me venture into some other things soon. So.
Very cool. That's exciting news. I'm sure you probably can't say much about it. Can you say, are you thinking more MMA side, or are you thinking more kickboxing side?
Definitely more kickboxing side. I just got a phobia with the dudes touching me. I don't do well with that. The whole laying on me thing, I don't do well with that. I don't do well with that.
I feel that. Well, very cool. Well, best of luck in that endeavor. And I know that all the sport karate community will be backing you on that, because we always like to see our own doing really well. And yeah, another thing I was going to say, it's probably smart that you haven't seen any competitors that want to stand in there and just trade blows with you, because I can't think of anybody that would want to take a reverse punch, a back fist, a ridge hand from Cam Dawson. Just for personal experience watching that, I want no part of getting hit by that. But anyway, last thing that we're going to get to here, and yet again, this is another thing that you wanted to speak about, so I want to give you that opportunity. And it's something interesting, because I talk with a lot of people about, well, what's your advice for people that want to get on a team for the first time? But one thing that you wanted to mention was advice for people on a big team. And full disclosure, you said on a so-called big team, right? So what would you say that advice is? Because I think we rarely hear that. We rarely hear advice for people on big teams.
Yeah, and the reason why I say big teams is because names and brands can be superstitious at times. And I know it's easy for people to lose their self. You know what I mean? Like, how many times have we seen people start off really, really sharp, like they on fire, and then they join, a sport karate team and forget who they are. And the most important thing that I would say about how it was the exact question, so I can hit it dead on.
The exact question was just advice for people on big teams.
Yeah. So my advice for someone on a big team would be appreciation. I would be mindful of conduct, but most importantly, don't lose yourself. So just like when you go into a relationship or a business deal, when you feel as though your morals or principles are being compromised, you cannot be, for lack of better terms, a slave to a name or to a title. And I feel as though people may have this outlook until they really understand what it means to be on a major team. And me and being on one of the biggest teams in sport karate history, there are ups and there are downs of everything. Bro, we done had times we were supposed to get checks, didn't get checks. We might have got it 3 months late, might have got it there. But it's how you conduct yourself when those things happen. Now, are you just allowing any old thing to happen? And you see some people who have the talent but don't understand their value. And you see people just, because they want a name on their chest, a name on their back, they'll just purchase a whole uniform just to say that they're a part. And I wouldn't want anyone to be on a major team and forget what got them there, and that's having fun. So I think once you eliminate having fun, then that's not the place for you. And I don't mean having fun like, being crazy all over the place, but when you dread doing something that at one point you love, I don't think that's the place for you. And when you feel as though that principles and what's being said is not adding up, once you claim family and this is your team, this is your family, if at any point you feel as though that is not such, you must speak on it. And me and you was teammates, bro. You know how I am. I'll be in a meeting, and if I feel like something don't add up, bro, I'm the first person. And the thing is, I'll do it even if it's not involving me. So if I feel like we're on a team and somebody was competing and everybody left, I'm calling everybody out. Because we cannot forget what makes us a team or what makes us a family. So if you have that blessing or privilege to be on a major team, don't forget that you bring value also. Please don't feel as though that you gain some superpowers by putting on a uniform or putting on a name. Is it a privilege? Yes. Is it an honor to walk in the footsteps of people who came before you? Yes, but don't lose yourself. You know what I mean? I don't think that you personally lost who you were. I remember before you got on and who you are now, even though the age difference is there, I can still call you any day. I can still call you in, but you didn't forget who you were. And I think that's major. And when you allow a brand, a name, a corporation, a school, any of those things to go to your head and you forget who you are and why you're doing what you're doing, I definitely don't think that that's the place for you to be. And there are a lot of people who have not been as blessed as me and you as far as the work ethic is concerned. I'm not even going to say talent because a lot of people are not willing to do what me and you do in order to be at that level. And that's something I think that me and you connected on a lot, and we never forgot what it meant to be us. We never allowed any brand to be bigger than us. At the end of the day, we could have a conversation and be genuine people without being caught up in the moment. That's what I feel. People work so hard to get on teams. They get there, and they think it's like a fiesta, like every single tournament. Like, no, things are going to go wrong. You're going to disagree. But what do you do when those things happen? Do you feel as though you're being heard? Do you feel like you're being valued? And if you aren't happy, be boisterous enough to say those things or to get on common ground, because a lot of people deal with situations because they're just not speaking up or whatever. So I think a lot of people, to answer the question, if you are on a big team, I would say that, don't ever forget who you are. Don't forget how you got there, and don't forget why you are there.
Excellent message. And one thing that I want to do before we wrap things up here, just to attach some names and kind of tell some background for our audience that may not fully be able to grasp what Cam is saying because maybe you're not on a big team. But if you look at some of the big names in sport karate today, I would say the majority of them exude exactly what Cam is talking about, right? Like, people see that I'm on Paul Mitchell, but I wasn't somebody that went to Paul Mitchell because they were known as the best team ever, and that's why I wanted to be on the team. No. I started, when I first started competing, my coach was Lauren Carney, who's the forms and weapons coach of Team Paul Mitchell. I competed on her premier martial arts team when they were the sponsor. It got switched over to a team called Team Change the Game. I stayed with Lauren. I had a dominant season. I think I went like 11-2 on a season as far as 11 overall grands wins, 2 tournaments that I didn't win the overall grands at. And I had offers from a ton of different teams that I won't say who all gave me an offer, but I had offers from a bunch of different teams, and I said, no. I'm rolling with my people, and Lauren is my people, and she is Paul Mitchell, and the only team that I'm leaving Change the Game for is if I get a call from Paul Mitchell, right? The same thing with you. Ultimately, you went to dojo, and your dad was coaching that team.
No, backtrack, bro.
Backtrack, yeah.
Backtrack, because Damon been working with Coach. Damon had me working with me since I was like 7.
Absolutely.
He made that call. You don't have to say nothing else. And the thing is, I would have did that for him because of, like you said, the journey and the path that we were already on. When something aligns with your principles and understanding, it'll feel right. But anybody trying to be on a big team, they'll feel when it's wrong. You will have that feeling like, this don't feel like that. This don't feel like what I was, looking for. So you and Lauren's situation is just like me and Damon's. The only other common denominator is that Damon and my father happen to be friends also. But, a lot of people don't know that Damon made me earn that, man. He really made me earn it. Why? Because, that's family. He wasn't going to give me anything. A lot of people felt as though, like, I got on because of, Damon. I call him my uncle, and, my dad and him was real, real close. But nah, man, Damon put it off for a long time because I was showing out at a young age, and he still put it off. Nah, he was like, no, earn it. And it got to a point where it motivated me to be undeniable, and that's when that step took place. So I definitely understand that transition. And yes, I did have a foot in the door, unlike people who had to send in tryout tapes and all that other stuff. I was with Damon, all the time, and even if I wasn't with him physically I could call. I had him at my disposal. I was blessed enough to have him as like, an instructor. So, I definitely understand where you come from as far as the loyalty aspect is concerned.
Absolutely. And there's other great competitors in our sport that do it as well. I've heard other podcasts and stuff mention, a guy like Bailey Murphy, who Bailey Murphy is becoming a superstar in this sport. And he's been rolling with Mr. G all the way through. You know what I mean? And I think if you talk to Mr. G ever, he's got some stories about Bailey's loyalty that go pretty deep. And there's a ton of other examples. I mean, you've got, Avery Plowden and Morgan Plowden that are fighting for their dad coaching on Impacts. And obviously those ties go even deeper than just that being their dad, and
right.
Ross Dean and his involvement, and Jody. And I mean, there's so many great athletes in our sport that display that loyalty that I don't know if people that are just spectators understand that. They just see that that's the big team and that's who plays for those big teams, whether it be Impacts or Straight Up or Paul Mitchell or Dojo or whoever, right? And I think that it is nice for us to kind of have this discussion and peel that curtain back a little bit so that people see that a lot of this is real genuine, right? Granted, you do get people who see teams as an accomplishment, and there's nothing wrong with that. Some teams are an accomplishment, you know what I mean, to get that sponsorship and work your way up and see it as something that you accomplish. But what Cam and I are saying here, and Cam, correct me if I'm wrong, is that there's also something real special about when it's people that you trust, people that you care about, and that's who you're representing.
Bro, it don't matter what go on. If I'm at a tournament and I see a huddle, bro, I'm in there, bro. It don't matter what go on, it don't matter what I'm wearing or whatever, man. That's, that kind of environment, if you were in that position, then you understand that, bro. I done been walking around the tournament and seen you, Sammy, Kenzie, Tyler, and yo, put your hands, bro. I'm right there, bro. You don't have to question that. I mean, because it's something that is like, appreciated, and it's like no matter what. So that loyalty, and it doesn't mean that you are attached or you are controlled by. It's just, once again, being able to demonstrate that appreciation for the opportunity.
Absolutely. Great stuff this whole time, Cam. Really appreciate your time. It's been an absolute pleasure. Guys, if you have any questions for myself or the awesome Dawson himself, Cam, feel free to go ahead and drop those down in the comments below. Share this podcast if you enjoyed it. All kinds of great topics about sport karate and outside of sport karate, some excellent things about instructing and what it means to be an instructor, what it means to be a champion, and just real great martial arts talk here today. So, Cam, really appreciate that, man. Thank you for your time. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. Thank you to Black Belt Magazine for sponsoring this podcast. This has been the Jackson Rudolph Podcast. Can't wait to see you guys next time. Thanks again, Cam.
Appreciate you, brother.